So in this video we're going to look at how to say in Spanish where you live and to talk about which languages you speak. In order to do this we're going to need to learn the conjugation of two of the three kinds of regular verbs in Spanish. A regular verb like hablar, to speak, which ends in AR, and a regular verb like vivir, to live, which ends in IR. So a regular verb is a verb which has lots of other verbs that follow the same pattern as it, i.e. it's the model for other kinds of verbs. The most common kind of regular verb in Spanish is a verb that ends in AR, an AR regular verb. Hablar is one we can use as our model. So if we learn the endings of the verb hablar, to speak, we'll also know the endings of any other regular AR verb. So on this slide now you can see that in order to form the different persons of the regular AR verb hablar, we simply take the AR off the ending of the infinitive, and then we add the different endings for the persons. So for the first person singular, I speak, hablo, I speak. For the second person singular, AS, hablas, you speak. For the third person singular, he, she or it speaks, and habla. And then in the plurals we get we speak, hablamos. You, plural, all of you speak, habláis, and they speak, hablan. Another kind of regular verb in Spanish, another conjugation, is the IR regular verb. And here we've got the model vivir, to live. So again, the same thing happens. In order to conjugate the verb, to put it into its different persons, we take the IR off the end of the infinitive, vivir, and add the relevant endings. So, I live becomes vivo, same ending as the AR, an O for I for the first person, and then we get you singular live, vives, he, she or it lives, vive. We live, notice now there is a vowel change back to the same vowel as in the infinitive, and I, so we live is vivimos. You plural live, vivís. Notice the accent on the second I, replacing the dot. And finally the third person plural, they live, viven, where the vowel has gone back to being the same as in the second and third persons singular. Notice that with neither of these regular verbs have I written on the left hand side in the Spanish the subject pronouns, the words I, you, he, she, it, we, you plural, or they. As you might remember when we met two irregular verbs, tener, to have, and ser, to be, Spanish has no need to use the words for I, you, he, she, it, because every single one of the verb endings is different from the rest. So it's perfectly clear when I say vivo that it can only be I live. It can't be any other person of the verb. Because of this, the words for I, you, he, she, it, which do exist in Spanish, are rarely used. So now here are some examples of how we might say where we live. The question first of all, where do you live? ¿Dónde vives? ¿Dónde vives? And several answers. Vivo en Londres, en Inglaterra. Vivo en Londres, en Inglaterra. Notice that Spanish uses the same word en for cities, Londres, and countries, Inglaterra. Vivimos en un piso en el centro de la ciudad. We live in a flat in the centre of the city. Again, the word en being used for the kind of accommodation we live in and for the part of the city in which we live. El centro de la ciudad, the centre of the city. Mis abuelos viven en una casa en las afueras. So the third person of the verb, for they live, my grandparents. Again, en, to say the kind of accommodation that they have, and en for the part of the city in which they live. And finally, mi primo vive en un barrio que se llama Camden. He lives, so the third person singular ending. Again, en consistently being used to say where somebody lives or what they live in. Un barrio, an area, general word for a district. Notice that Spanish, when it says an area called, says an area which is called, or which literally calls itself. This is the only way of saying called in Spanish. We must use this word, que se llama. And for the final slide in this video, using the regular AR verb hablar to talk about which languages you speak. So here's the question: what languages do you speak? ¿Qué idiomas hablas? The question word, ¿qué? What? The noun for languages, un idioma. Un idioma. Notice that it's a masculine noun, even though it ends in an A. ¿Qué idiomas? What languages do you speak? The second person singular of the verb hablar. And some possible answers. Hablo inglés. I speak English. Notice that there's no word coming between I speak and English, just as there is not in English. Hablo inglés. Y un poco de francés. And a bit of French. En casa, at home, hablamos italiano. We speak Italian. Porque mi madre es italiana. Because my mother is Italian. Mis abuelos no hablan muy bien el inglés. Mis abuelos, my grandparents, don't speak very well. No hablan muy bien el inglés, English. Son polacos, they are Polish, y hablan polaco, and speak Polish. Notice in this sentence here that when the verb hablar is not right next to the language, the word el has come in. El is only omitted when we have the verb hablar right next to the language. All languages in Spanish are masculine. El inglés, el italiano, el polaco. And our final example in this video: mi primo habla inglés, italiano, francés, polaco y un poco de alemán. My cousin speaks English, Italian, French, Polish, and a bit of German. Notice as a final point that just as with the nationalities, languages in Spanish do not have capital letters. Inglés, English. Francés, French. Lowercase letters throughout for the languages in Spanish.